The room fell completely silent the moment the lawyer read the final sentence of the will. Daniel Carter slowly turned toward his wife. Melissa stared at the document in the lawyer's hands, her fingers tightening around the delicate gold necklace at her throat. But the money wasn't the real shock. It was the condition attached to it, and neither of them had expected what it would reveal. If you enjoy dramatic relationship stories like this, consider subscribing for more. The office smelled faintly of old paper and polished wood. Daniel sat stiffly in the leather chair across from Harold Whitmore's desk. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing the silver watch he had worn for years. Melissa sat beside him, legs crossed neatly, her eyes fixed on the large envelope lying on the desk. Neither of them had spoken much on the drive there. They both knew why they had been called. Daniel's Aunt Eleanor had passed away 3 weeks earlier. She had been wealthy, quietly wealthy, but no one in the family had expected what came next. Harold Whitmore adjusted his glasses and opened the envelope carefully. "Mrs. Eleanor Carter left the majority of her estate," he said calmly. "To the two of you." Melissa blinked in surprise. Daniel leaned slightly forward. "How much?" he asked. The lawyer glanced at the document. "The total value of the estate is approximately $6 million. Melissa inhaled sharply. Daniel didn't speak. $6 million. For a brief moment, the weight that had lived quietly between them for years seemed to disappear. But that feeling didn't last long, because the lawyer hadn't finished speaking. Harold Whitmore turned the final page of the will. "There is, however, one condition." Daniel's brow tightened. "What kind of condition?" The lawyer paused. "As part of the inheritance, Mrs. Carter requested that the two of you remain legally married for a minimum of 3 years after receiving the funds." Melissa's expression stiffened. Daniel let out a quiet breath. "That's unusual," he said. Whitmore nodded. "There is also one additional clause." Melissa's fingers slowly wrapped around the pendant at her neck. "What clause?" she asked. The lawyer looked down at the document again. "If either party files for divorce within that 3-year period." He paused. "The entire inheritance will be donated to charity." Daniel leaned back slowly in his chair. For a moment, the room felt smaller. 3 years. They just had to stay married for 3 years. That should have been easy. But the silence between them suggested otherwise. And what Daniel said next would begin exposing something that had been buried for a long time. Daniel glanced sideways at Melissa. "So," he said quietly, "we're rich now." Melissa didn't smile. "Yes," she replied. Her voice sounded careful. Too careful. And that was the moment Daniel realized something uncomfortable. Melissa didn't look happy. She looked trapped. The drive home was quiet. The city moved past them through the windshield, restaurants glowing with warm lights, people laughing on sidewalks, cars rushing past. Daniel kept his hand steady on the steering wheel. Melissa stared out the passenger window. "You didn't say much back there," Daniel finally said. Melissa shrugged slightly. "I was surprised. Most people would be thrilled." She turned toward him slowly. "Are you thrilled?" Daniel hesitated, and that hesitation carried years of unspoken frustration. "That depends," he said. "On what?" He glanced at her. "On whether we were planning to stay married anyway." Melissa's gaze shifted away immediately. The tension inside the car thickened, because that question had been hovering over their marriage for a long time. And now $6 million had just made it impossible to ignore. The following weeks should have felt exciting. But something strange began happening inside their home. Instead of bringing them closer together, the inheritance seemed to pull old memories back to the surface. Little things, small arguments, forgotten conversations. One evening, Daniel stood in the kitchen pouring 2 glasses of wine. Melissa sat at the dining table, scrolling through her phone. "Have you thought about what we'll do with the money?" Daniel asked. Melissa didn't look up. "Maybe travel." Daniel placed the glass in front of her. "Travel where?" She shrugged. "Anywhere." He studied her face. "That's vague." Melissa finally looked up. "Well, we never really traveled before." There was something in her tone, not excitement. Something closer to quiet accusation. Daniel sat down slowly. "You know why?" he said. Melissa raised an eyebrow. "Do I?" The air between them grew colder, because both of them knew exactly what she meant. Years earlier, Daniel had turned down a job opportunity in another city, a promotion that would have doubled his salary. But Melissa had refused to move. Her career was here, her friends were here, her life was here, and Daniel had stayed. At the time, he told himself it didn't matter, but the truth was more complicated, and the inheritance was starting to pull those old choices into the open. Late one night, Daniel found Melissa sitting alone in the living room. The house was quiet. A single lamp cast soft light across the room. She held a glass of wine in one hand. "You're still awake?" he asked. Melissa looked up. Her eyes were thoughtful. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Daniel nodded. "Sure." She hesitated, then asked the question that would change the direction of the conversation. "If the money hadn't happened, would you still want to stay married?" Daniel stood very still. That wasn't a casual question, and both of them knew it. "What kind of question is that?" he asked. Melissa leaned back slightly. "An honest one." Daniel took a slow breath. "Why are you asking?" Melissa looked at the floor. "Because I think we both know things haven't been right." The room grew silent again, and for the first time since the lawyer's office, the truth began pushing its way to the surface. Daniel walked closer to the window. The city lights flickered beyond the glass. "You want honesty?" he said quietly. Melissa nodded. "Yes." Daniel turned toward her. "I think we stopped choosing each other a long time ago." Melissa swallowed slowly. Her fingers tightened around the stem of the glass. "That's not entirely fair, isn't it? You could have left too." Daniel laughed softly. "You asked me to stay, and you agreed." "Yes," he said, "but agreeing doesn't mean the resentment disappears." The words hung in the air, heavy, unavoidable. Melissa looked at him for a long moment. "And you think I don't have resentment?" That question caught him off guard. "About what?" Melissa set the glass down carefully. "About the fact that you never stopped reminding me what you gave up." Daniel blinked. "I never." "You didn't say it," she interrupted quietly. "But I could feel it." That was the moment both of them realized something unsettling. The inheritance hadn't created their problems. It had simply exposed them. 2 months later, Daniel sat once again across from Harold Whitmore's desk. This time Melissa sat beside him more quietly than before. The lawyer folded his hands calmly. "I assume you've both considered the terms of the will." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes." Whitmore looked between them. "And your decision?" Daniel glanced at Melissa. She met his eyes. For the first time in weeks, there was no tension in her expression, just clarity. Daniel turned back to the lawyer. "We're not filing for divorce." Whitmore nodded. "A sensible financial decision." Daniel smiled faintly. "It's not about the money." Melissa rested her hand gently on the desk. "For the first time in years," she said quietly, "we finally talked honestly." Whitmore raised an eyebrow, and Melissa glanced at Daniel, and we realized something. Daniel finished the thought. "We were about to throw away something that wasn't actually broken." Whitmore leaned back slightly, and the resentment. Daniel smiled. "That part, we're finally dealing with." For the first time since the inheritance arrived, Melissa smiled too. Not a polite smile, a real one. And strangely enough, $6 million had forced them to confront the one thing they had avoided for years, each other. Looking back at their story, the inheritance was never really about money. It was a mirror. A mirror that forced Daniel and Melissa to finally look at the quiet resentment they had been carrying for years. Sometimes relationships don't break because of one dramatic event. They slowly drift apart through silence, unspoken frustrations, and decisions that are never fully discussed. But occasionally, something unexpected forces the people to stop pretending everything is fine. And in that moment of honesty, they discover whether the relationship was truly broken or simply neglected. Resentment grows in silence, but honesty, even painful honesty, can rebuild what distance nearly destroyed. Relationships often hide problems beneath everyday routines. But when those hidden tensions finally surface, the real question becomes, do you walk away or finally face the truth together? What would you have done if you were in their position?